Welcome to Account Management Secrets, the podcast where we talk about building stronger client relationships and driving real business results. Today's guest is Dave Jackson, a coach, author, and thought leader who spent years challenging how companies think about customer success. Dave calls himself the CS Heretic, and he's here to break down customer-led growth, what it is, why it matters, and how to do it right. We'll cover what it really means to be customer-led and why so many companies get that wrong, the role of account managers, customer success teams, and leadership in making it happen, and how to know if your organization is truly focused on delivering results for your customers. Now, Dave doesn't sugarcoat anything, and this conversation is full of practical advice and real examples that will challenge your thinking. So whether you're in account management, customer success, or leading a team, you'll walk away from this conversation with some really clear ideas that you can start applying right away. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Dave Jackson. Hey, Dave, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to see you.
Thanks for the invitation, Alex. It's a pleasure.
Now, you call yourself the CS or customer success heretic, meaning you're someone who's constantly taking the opposite angle from a lot of the things that we consider to be sacred cows, so to speak, in the account management and the post sales world. And I've really enjoyed your LinkedIn posts and the content that you create, which really refreshes our way of thinking about things. So you're often bringing different angles, different approaches to things that we consider sort of settled debates, if you will. One of the things that you have been talking about a lot, and I think this is not just currently, but something that you've done through a lot of your career, but is now getting a name, a recognizable name for many of us, is the idea of customer-led growth. So we've all been through, waves of go-to-market, waves of customer acquisition, waves of trying different things to acquire customers, to retain customers, and to drive profitability within our companies. Everything from things like product-led growth, for example, versus AEs or SDRs and all this type of stuff that's going on now. I would love to start the conversation by understanding, what does customer-led growth mean? Like, how do we define that? How do we start to get our heads around this concept?
The idea of a label on something is both good and bad. It's good in that it helps people recognize and associate with something. It's bad in that it tends to become labeled and it tends to have a specific thing. Customer growth to me, and I work mainly with B2B SaaS companies, it's all about how do you deliver measurable results? How do you sell and deliver measurable results to your chosen customers in a way that delivers profitable growth for your company? So it's both sides of that coin. If you, and I am not quite as old as I look, but I've been around a while. And the one thing that's run through my career all the time is an intense belief that any successful organization is only successful because it puts its customers at the heart of what it does. If they're not, then it's what I would call a scam or a rip-off, quite frankly. So it's about focusing on the customers. And it's one of the mistakes I think people make about customer-led growth is they think it was a post-first sale activity. It isn't. In my book, it's not. Customer-led growth is understanding the results that your chosen customers are trying to achieve. And once you've figured out what that is, and by the way, by customers, I mean both the companies and the individual, the key roles within that. So it's then figuring out, if you understand that, then effectively, that's what you build your value proposition around. That's what your marketing should communicate. That's what sales sells. That's what post-sales services, whatever it might be, enables. And from a SaaS perspective, that's what your product should deliver. So it's that red thread that runs throughout the whole go-to-market activity. A lot of people position just as post-sale. I think that's a big mistake. It's the whole customer lifecycle. And it's viewing that from the outside in, taking the customer perspective, but in a way, as I say, that you're building this engine which is joined up, and it's joined up in a way that just doesn't deliver great stuff for customers, but it delivers profitable growth for your company.
So this is a really interesting definition, right? So we're selling and delivering the results that we know our customers care about, and in so doing, it's driving profitability for our business. Sounds fairly straightforward, right? A lot of people would simply nod and say, yes, that's what we'd like to do as a company, and that's my strategy and that's my approach. But when we sort of pull these apart one by one and see what do all these words actually mean in there, then the story gets a lot more complicated. Now, to your point, so when we talk about we're going to sell stuff that equals customer value, well, do we know who our customer is? Do we know what they actually care about? Are we able to deliver the things that are their priorities? Are all the different internal stakeholders, be it sales, marketing, product, et cetera, aligned behind this? And then do we have both a top of funnel and a post funnel series of activities and sequences that support it? So my guess is when you talk to and I know you talk to a lot of SaaS CEOs and revenue leaders, but my guess is when you talk to SaaS CEOs and revenue leaders, you get a lot of nodding and people saying, yeah. And then you start to investigate and see, where the gaps are or where are things breaking down. What are those kind of obvious areas where people are not looking today?
I think there's two parts to the answers which are connected. The biggest challenge is that we still have this tendency of building organizations in silos. So we try to build a great marketing engine. We try to build a great sales engine. We try to build a great product. We try to build a great post-sales experience. But if they're not operating off a common base, and if they're not joined up in the true sense, then it will fail. The biggest barrier to customer experience and to delivering successful customers is our own organization structure. So that's the biggest challenge, getting people to recognize, and part of this, Alex, is tied up with this wonderfully Western view that organization design is about rearranging the lines and boxes on an org chart. Right. It's not. Organization structure, roles and responsibilities are important, but they are the last element of organization design. So if you go to architects will tell you, they've got a saying, form follows function. You don't decide what the building is going to look like until you've figured out who uses it, what purpose, what processes do we need to put in place. Only when a good architect's understood those things will they then start to sketch out what the building looks like. We tend not to do that with organizations. We tend to put the structure in place before we've figured out what the connective tissue is.
Right. And then we go out when we need to. We go out, we say, oh, we've got a gap in our marketing. Our marketing isn't performing that well. So we go out and find a great CMO who comes with all of her existing experiences and frameworks and ways of doing things. And we sort of slaughter in and hope that it works for the best.
Correct.
Hope she develops the right partnerships internally or whatever it is. Yeah. Or similarly, if we have a product need, then we go find a great chief product officer and put them in there, type of thing. And we're just doing piecemeal. And it's really tactical, not strategic, essentially.
It is absolutely. That's tactical, not strategic. There was an American, by the way, I love quotes, so I'll probably use a few, but there's one of my favorites is by an American called Arthur Jones, many, many, many years ago. And he said, every organization is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. It's a truism. Yeah. And if you want to change the results that you get, you have to change the organization. But I repeat, that's not about just changing the lines and boxes, because that won't work. And this is why when I talk about customer-led growth, it fundamentally it's an organization design challenge, but true organization design, not lines and boxes design.
And so what is the right way for us to be thinking about this? If it is an organizational design challenge and you're talking to a leader, so maybe not the day-to-day account manager or CSM or what have you, you're talking to the leader, either the revenue leader or the overall corporate leader. What are the right questions that they should be asking when they're thinking about this broadly speaking, this organizational design?
You start with where it has to start. You start with the customer. You figure out, by the way, I founded a SaaS company 25 years ago. And you act as a founder, and you've been through this, Alex. You start a company because you've identified a problem that you think you can solve, which people will pay for. So you have an innate understanding of what that challenge is, and that's where you start. I think the thing that you've got to do to really crack that is go that one stage further. It's not just say, well, actually, this is the pain or gain point that I'm addressing, but you then start to express that in ways of saying, well, how do my chosen customers think about that? How do they measure? How does what I do impact their performance? And that's the starting point. You do a thing which we call customer results discovery. This pain and gain, how do they think about it? How do they measure it? What KPIs is your product going to help them move? And then, as I said again, that becomes the red thread. Once you've understood that, value proposition, marketing messages, sales approach, product itself from a SaaS perspective, but then, any post-sales services. So that you start outside. You go to customers. Go on.
Well, no, I was going to say. So we talked about, the success behind customer-led growth is selling and delivering a certain set of results. Then you said we then want to do customer results discovery, right? We want to go deeper to figure out, what is the overarching theme? Essentially, the customer results discovery is kind of the why are we here? Like why are we doing this? Why do we bother? And is this something that a lot of companies are doing? Is this something very few companies are doing? Like, what is your assessment based on now having looked at the market and done this kind of work?
I think a lot of companies, founders particularly, innately understand that, but haven't put the hard thinking work into expressing that in a way that their customers can relate to. There's a very old saying by a guy who was probably one of the first management consultants, a guy called Peter Drucker. And Drucker once said, the customer rarely buys what the company thinks it's selling. And that's the problem. We tend, we push our products. We talk about the benefit and value of our products, but what we actually sell is features. We're better at this. We're better at this.
This is the whole idea behind, the idea here is are you selling whatever it is, a hammer or a nail or a screwdriver? No, I'm selling a hole in the wall. Actually, I'm not even selling the hole in the wall. I'm selling the redecoration of the home office or whatever the point is. Yeah.
By the way, another Harvard professor of the same era. So, this is not new. This stuff is not new at all. It's just that we still don't do it. We are still a lot of organizations are still very product focused. I saw some research only in the last couple of days. And that research looked at how buyers think about people selling to them. And again, it was tech-based. They basically said, and these were CIOs and CFOs mainly, and they said that 62% of the people that sell to them do a good job in presenting their products and their company. But 78% of them do a poor job in understanding my business and how what they do affects it. There's a disconnect too often between what we are selling and what customers actually want. And until we get into their mindset and start presenting what we do in their terms, marketing will say this is not new. It's not. It's just that we just still don't do it enough of it.
Yeah. So what do you think is getting in the way there? Because when I hear you talk about this, maybe it's just because I've been in this space for a long time myself, and I've had a lot of people on the podcast who say similar things. Right? We need to be delivering value and tracking value and reminding the customer of all the great things we've done for them and aligning with their goals and all this. To me, it sounds like normal practice, as in what someone would do if your job title were account management or customer success. Yet it hasn't necessarily percolated through all that many organizations, or it hasn't become the full strategy, right?
Correct.
So everyone they'll pay lip service to being customer centric, and the website will say they're customer centric.
Yeah.
But they're failing the tests that you're laying out for us about what true customer centricity is.
Yeah.
What do you think is holding them back here, Dave?
Well, we've already mentioned the stovepiped approach. That's part of it. People think about this in pockets rather than thinking about it. What does this look like across the entire customer life cycle? Or in other words, what does it look like across the entire go-to-market process? The other thing is, I think a lot of people just struggle to get outside of their own organizations. I spend a lot of time with customer success people. Well, one of my favorite tasks is to say to an audience of CS leaders, some of them fairly senior in big organizations, doing good jobs. And my favorite question is, how do you measure customer success? And they typically will reply, gross revenue retention, logo churn, net revenue retention, net promoter score.
Oof.
And I'll say, they're great.
You can see me wince at that, yeah.
Well, they're all great measures. They're all important to understand. But none of them are measures of the customer's success.
Yeah.
And by the way, that apostrophe S makes all the difference. So I spend a lot of time helping people understand the difference between customer success and customer's success. Mm-hmm. It sounds silly, it sounds semantic, Alex, in a way it is, but it's a device to say, get out of your own organization and start thinking outside in.
Yeah, that's a great question. And to ask people, how do you measure your customer success? I would venture to guess that most of the people listening to this podcast, most of the people that I'm talking to, account management practitioners and leaders, don't have really great answers for that. And they don't have great answers for that because they haven't gone through this results discovery like you're talking about, because they don't truly have customer centricity in the blood of the organization. Like it's not at the heart of it.
Yeah, yeah. I used to work for a company many, many years ago. And the CEO there, it was actually a big tech, a hardware company. And the CEO at the time said, he had a wonderful saying. He said, we're either customer focused top to bottom, or we're not customer focused at all. Mm-hmm. And it has to be, you can't have pockets of it help a little bit, but the customer sees the gaps because the gaps are what cause it the problem. The difficulty becomes when we impose on customers a requirement for them to connect what we should already know. So corporate memory.
Tell me more.
So corporate memory. So one of the biggest frustrations that customers face is, I told somebody this last week. And because we think of it in pockets, we've got a marketing system and a marketing software. We've got sales software. We don't have this joined up thinking, this joined up approach. And it's that connective tissue that makes the difference. So we've got to work much, much harder at these things, about thinking about things from the customer's perspective. Now, I argue that if you take customer results for the results that matter to your chosen to the key roles in your chosen customers, and you use that as a red thread, there is no more powerful basis for alignment. That doesn't mean that everybody has to be doing the same thing, but it does mean that everybody's got the same understanding of what it is you offer. You've joined the systems up in a way which says what we're communicating, how do we sell that? If we sell that, how do we deliver that? If we deliver that, how does the product support that? If the product does that, how do we enable that? So a lot of the work that I do is around building this connective tissue. Not structural change, it's more fun. It's about frameworks. It's about everybody saying we've got a common ICP for these different use cases. It's about everybody saying, I know what the customer lifecycle as a whole looks like. And by the way, I've built that from the outside in. Not, as I say, I started a SaaS company. We grew it, never massive, but we grew it, sold it twice. One of the most fundamental things we did was we scrapped our marketing process and our sales process and our post-sales process and adopted an outside-in customer life cycle. And every stage of that life cycle was described in what the customer or the prospect was trying to achieve at that stage. And to the point where we actually renamed all of the lead and opportunity stages in our CRM system around these. So we scrapped the traditional, lead, marketing qualified lead, sales accepted lead, opportunity, and just adopted this customer lifecycle stage names. Did it make a massive difference to the process? Yes, it did. Did it make a massive difference to how people think about what we're doing? I am here to help my customer solve this problem at this stage and help them move on to the next stage. So it's just nothing other than outside-in thinking permeating the whole organization.
Okay, so we have a lot of topics here that I think are worthy of further exploration and discussion. So we talked about, we're talking about customer value as the red thread that's connecting all these multiple silos and parts of our organization. And the question is then, can we understand what that customer value is? Can we all agree on it, align around it, rally behind what those elements are? So that part, I think, is something I want to talk about. But the other thing I want to understand better is, you mentioned this outside-in process. The idea being we're looking at things differently, and we're looking at from the customer's perspective, but also their nomenclature, where they are, and how they're thinking about the problem that they're trying to solve, et cetera. Let's go deeper into that one first, and then we'll talk about this red thread alignment.
Yeah. So the outside-in customer journey, and it's it's one customer life cycle. Now, sorry, I use the word journey. I should slap myself because I don't like that phrase. I've never found a customer journey that a customer will follow because they're too busy following their own path. Correct. What it is,
nobody told them that they were a customer who's supposed to be on a journey.
Correct. What it is it's back to this concept of architecture. It's that overall sketch that says these are the things that customers go through. So all you do is you sit down and you say, okay, who are my chosen customers? So, ICP, target companies. Within target companies, by use case, who are the people that we're actually dealing with? What are the key roles that we're dealing with? And then you say, okay, back to the point where they just don't even know we exist. They don't know they've got this problem. What do we do to attract, to interest them in what we do? I think that's called demand generation or marketing. So you start to think and say, okay, well, if I know the problem that they're trying to solve, the pain and gain, I know how they should measure that. I start to put out content. It's got nothing to do with my product whatsoever. All I'm doing is raising in their consciousness that this is a problem that actually they should be interested in. And they should be interested in it because it will help improve their performance. Mm-hmm. So, you go through it and then you get to the say, well, actually, yeah, you're right. I should be interested in this. What do I do about it? Well, then again, you've got that. So all the time, okay, I'm interested. Now, I think you can help us. Tell me how it's going to help me specifically. So all you're doing is you're thinking through what are the stages that these key roles are going through and how can I help them? There's a guy I know in the States, unfortunately doesn't do the podcast anymore, a guy called Bill Cushard. He used to do a podcast called Helping Sells. And the tagline was, helping sells, but selling doesn't help. And what I used to talk about at my company, and I talk to the companies I work with now, is don't think about selling per se. Think about how you can nurture buying. And again, it sounds like a semantic difference, Alex. And in some respects it is. But it's getting to this mindset of I'm here to help the buyer, to help the customer achieve their next steps.
Yeah, well, I mean, on top of that, so partly, yes, sure, it's nomenclature, but it's more mindset. The mindset of saying, what am I doing? Am I out there selling widgets, or am I actually helping the customer meet their needs? And the cool thing about what you're talking about, so first of all, I'll just say, nobody's CRM is set up as problem unaware, problem aware, trying to figure out a solution to their problem, deciding if we're the best fit for this, et cetera. Which, by the way, if they change it, it would really improve, I think, a lot of customers' experience, because you'd be a lot clearer on where you actually are. But so firstly, nobody's CRM is set up like that. But the second thing that I really like about this, and I think is worth exploring a little bit, is this is now the link between what you were saying earlier about the definition of customer-led growth and how we're doing it. Because what I'm doing is I'm saying I'm orienting this entire process around my customer being aware of a problem, trying to solve a problem, deciding if I'm the right person. And therefore, once we get the customer, we can then automatically extend this to how are we doing with solving the problem? Are we delivering the value that they expected?
Correct.
Are they happy with the trajectory? Are they looking like a hero? All that type of stuff, which is the actual end goal of customer-led growth, which is then to increase advocacy, increase stickiness, improve the performance that our customers are getting, and so on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I say again, the red thread that runs through that, people talk about customer value, and I don't mind that phrase. The thing about value is it's a very vague concept, which is why, I know you've had Greg Danes on the podcast previously, and he will also say it's about measurable results. The very fact that you're able to measure results already has an impact. And there's a lot of data around. I saw something recently, 81%, I think it was from Ernst & Young in 2022. Ernst & Young say 81% of tech buyers expect to have a business case. They expect you to be able to tell them how you're going to improve their performance. Oh, by the way, wouldn't it be a good idea if we actually delivered that as well? We kept our promise. So you can see how this concept of measurable results just is the natural red thread through everything that we do.
So this outside in gives us a different frame of how to think about the customer life cycle. And to your point, the customer journey thing, I've had people on this podcast talking about customer journey before, but it's really challenging because the customer doesn't know they're on a journey. They think they're just trying to buy a software app, or they're just trying to solve a problem, or they're just hiring you to do whatever. And so they rarely think about themselves as on a journey. And by the way, most of them don't want to be on a journey. They just want to get their problem solved. They just want to have their needs met, their goals met, et cetera. But so the outside in gives us a different way of framing and thinking about this. And it uses the customer life cycle. Now, when I hear you talking about the red thread and the customer results discovery and getting, customer centricity at the heart of the business and the core strategy of the business, like I'm sitting here and I'm nodding and I'm like, yes, this all makes sense. And then there's a part of my brain that is sitting there saying, this sounds impossibly hard for anything other than a brand new company. So how do we walk through this? Like, how do you take a company that's 10 million, 100 million or more and re-engineer their thinking around this to actually make this work? I'm only assuming here, but I'm assuming there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah. The first thing I do is I sit down and I look at the whites of the eye of the CEO. I have a conversation with her or him, and I say, this is how I see the world. And if we don't agree, then I decide you're not part of my ICP. And it is that brutal, because if he or she doesn't get it, it won't happen. So that's the starting point. Now, can you convince them? Yes, you can, because you show them the evidence, you show them research, you show them case studies. And I talk about my own company, and I talk about a couple of others that I know that have done something similar. And my experience, Alex, is a lot of them innately recognize that. They know that they are there to serve customers, but nobody's given them a concept and a series of joined up frameworks to help them implement it. So then you talk about, well, what are those frameworks? Well, let's build a library of the results that matter to your customers. Let's build a sales process that focuses on those. So I'm working with a customer at the moment, they use Medic. And if you look at their CRM, they've got all the, MEDDICC, but they've got all boxes for that in CRM. Problem with this is they're empty boxes. M stands for metrics. That shouldn't be an empty box. It should be a drop-down list of, here are the metrics that we address. Which ones does this customer want to improve? So you've got to get very focused. So you talk about building results into their ideal customer profiles. You talk about building results into their role profiles or personas. You talk about building into their sales process. You talk about how they build a business case to support the purchase. And that business case says, here are the results that we're going to improve. And by the way, this is the ROI you'll get as a result of that. And this is the first step we're going to take you through. This might be a 1 year, 2 year, it may even be a 3 or 4 year journey. But by the end of next quarter, I'm going to get you to here by doing these things. That's a sales deliverable, which, by the way, is then what your post-sales team and your product delivers. So you start to unpack what the frameworks are that underpin this, and how you can start to implement it.
And I will say this until I'm blue in the face. I've said it already many times on this podcast, and will continue to do so. And the reason that I like your model a lot is because it reaffirms the fact that this entire thing is a competitive advantage in your sales process.
Massive. Well, actually, I think it's beyond that, Alex. I think it's a massive. So I've said, the basis of what we're talking about is built on a deep, deep understanding of your chosen customers. And I've said for many, many years now, that understanding your customers better than the competition is a real source of competitive advantage.
Yeah.
And it's not just an advantage in your sales, it's an advantage in the way that you market. Because I understand that, I know how to talk to them. I know how to sell to them. I know how to build my product to enable it. I know how to deliver services to guide them and to help them achieve it.
So how can a company decide if they're doing customer-led growth right, and who's doing it really well today?
It can be who's doing it well. Well, a lot of stuff that I talk about goes back to things that I did at my SaaS company. And it was by far the most significant activity we did. There's a company in Switzerland, a travel company in Switzerland called Zaza. They're a relatively small travel tech company. The guy there that I know used to be the chief customer officer, is now the chief revenue officer. And they've done the same sort of thing. They figured out that actually all they do is they deliver 4 different types of value to their customers, and they're just building everything around that.
And what sort of if we're looking at this, are we seeing movement in certain metrics or KPIs? What are the ones that we should be looking at there to tell if we're moving in the right direction or not?
Win rate, sales cycle time, retention, growth. Again, there's some good research being done on the benefit in terms of growth from just alignment. Part of the reason is you're pulling in the same direction. You're not working against each other. So there's a lot of data out there that says if you're aligned, if you're focused on customers, if you're delivering measurable results, this stuff pays off. I was a CEO of a SaaS company. I didn't do this stuff because it's nice to do. Do I think it's great to do good things for customers? Yeah. But I want to do good things for customers that make money for me. And it's an and, not an or.
Right. Now, Dave, as we wrap up here, if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, this makes a ton of sense, what's the first step? Where do they begin? Do they begin with the assessments that you just mentioned on the website? Are there prompts that they can use in internal team meetings to start thinking about this? Or what's the very first step to take?
The very first step to take is to get, not necessarily all in the same room at the same time, but ask one question. And that one question is, how do customers measure the impact we have on them? And if you get everybody in the organization thinking about that, hopefully you'll find there'll always be differences, but I think that Pareto rule will apply. 80% of the people will agree on a relatively small set of things. Otherwise, you've got a completely dysfunctional organization. You're probably not selling anything anyway. But that's the thing, just focus on them. Not what features have I got, but what is the impact that we're having on customers. Go and ask them. How do you measure what we do? What are your key metrics, and how does what we do impact those? And once you start to understand that, I think you'll start to build a momentum which says, actually, we can't not do this. Because in not doing it, what we're saying is, I don't care about customers. Provided we sell something, it doesn't matter whether they get any value. And again, go back to Greg's data. If you don't deliver some form of measurable results, you ain't going to retain that customer. So you might have put huge amounts of effort into acquisition. Your CAC might be high, but your LTV value is going to be crap.
Well, so I like that, and this is a great challenge for anyone who's listening. Is can you get everyone on your senior leadership team to answer the question, how do our customers measure the impact of whatever we're doing for them? And first of all, internally, do we have a common set of one or two or three things? But then, importantly, to your point, and this, by the way, is a totally overlooked secret weapon in the account management world, is go ask them. Literally, go see your customer and ask them. Don't send them an NPS survey. No. Don't send them an email. Show up and ask them and see what they have to say. Yeah.
There are a couple of following questions, but we can say that for another day, Alex. But let's just start with that one question. And you've got it cracked when you've got all of that leadership team and all of the people in the organization giving you some fairly common answers.
Fantastic. Well, David Jackson, thank you so much for joining us on Account Management Secrets for this journey through customer-led growth and the tremendous impact it can have. It was great to have you here.
Thanks for the opportunity.